I actually do not remember any music from this movie. I'm sure there's some, but
The very famous do 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 yeah 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 yeah. They even
oh,
used it for
that's
the
it.
TV show. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Your daddy and his way. Just get it? Because they're
Yeah.
vampires.
Okay. That's
You're
enough.
dead. You're. Okay.
Okay, we got enough. That's What We Do in the Shadows. What We Do in the Shadows is why we're here today on 4 p.m. on a Saturday, recording, not live, but this is pre-recorded. I watched this movie again recently. It's fun. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more than Beetlejuice. I like mockumentaries like this. It's sort of like Trailer Park Boys or The Office. It's I don't like vampires and werewolves. Like it's just something I typically don't enjoy watching, but this was an interesting twist on it.
I agree. Let's get into the. Let's do the story real quick, and then we'll do the actors and acting and stuff.
Okay. You want to do the
So
synopsis?
what is? Oh, I did it all the
Okay,
time.
first of all, I did it for Beetlejuice.
Didn't I do it for Wednesday?
You may have done it for Wednesday. I haven't gotten to the editing part of that one yet,
You
so
know what? I wrote it out anyway, so I'm gonna fucking do it just in
bless
case.
your heart.
I was prepared.
Bless it.
Okay. So today we're doing What We Do in the Shadows, the movie, not the TV show, that came out in 2014. It follows. It's a documentary crew that follows around a day in the life, a year in the life of the life and times of a house full of vampires in the modern world, and it covers, their memories, their, how they became a vampire, etc.
Yeah, and how they keep hidden and how they avoid being
Yes.
caught.
I really enjoy this movie for a variety of reasons, but I like how they take the mundane, like stupid human shit, and they just like are highly inept when it comes to things.
Well, that's got to be the best part of the movie, right? It flies in the face of like the stereotypical ancient vampire where they're super experienced, they're super intelligent, they always have a plan,
It turns it on its
they're
head.
always scheming, they're always, it takes all of that and it turns it right on its head. And you have four of the most inept vampires that probably are in existence. And not only that, but it's just like it's all vampires. Like they're all like goofballs. They're all idiots, every one of them. And but
Yeah.
they're not overt idiots, right? It has a very distinct flavor of comedy.
Yeah, I would say it's physical and interaction comedy with the characters because they're highly different characters. So like bouncing off of each other.
Hmm.
Apparently they have 90 hours of recorded footage, but only some of it made it into the film. So it's like a lot of improv.
Yeah. Well, if they got 90 hours of footage, yeah,
Yeah,
what's the runtime of this movie? I think it's like an hour and
an
a
hour and a
half.
half.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a lot of footage that's cut. It's the flavor of this comedy style is borderline cringe. It's borderline. It's not there because I personally cannot handle cringe comedy. I can't. I just can't handle that kind of comedy. I don't do well with it. I gotta leave the room. It's like I can't be a part of this. But this is kind of like borderline. It brings it just short of it being cringy, and it just works. It just works. There's a lot of absurdity into it. It is very distinctly Taika Waititi. It is it has his very distinct flavor to it.
If he would have
And
pushed it though, it would have become cringe.
yes, exactly. He brought it to that just short of it, and then so he's very good at that. But yes, I honestly lost count of how many times I've watched this movie. This movie came out in 2014. I have probably watched it somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 plus times. A lot, a lot, a lot of
And you
times I've
do
watched
pick
this
up
movie.
on different things every time.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I guess so. I know that they started a TV show with it, but I'm surprised they haven't made more movies because you get 90 hours of footage, I think you could make a few movies out of it. And it
You
doesn't
would
seem like
think.
a high budget. Like, yeah, the wardrobes and there was some cool special effects, but it seems like they could produce more of these quite
I think at that
cheaply.
time, Taika was like in Marvel directing stuff.
Gotcha.
So probably, I don't know, he probably put that at the forefront.
Mhm.
I wanted to cover the comedy side real quick. Because you know how different countries have their homage to different like bits back in the day and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I cannot tell if there was or not an homage to New Zealand comedy or comedians because I don't know their style. I didn't know if they snuck anything in there, so I was wondering about that.
I guess the only two New Zealand comics I know are these two guys. Well, one of them.
I personally am unaware. I have no idea, but I do know that excuse me, two of the three main actors, Taika and Jermaine, they both played in Flight of the Concords. I don't know if anyone who's listening may or may not have seen that show, but this is kind of it's very much in the same vein of Flight of the Concords. Very funny stuff. The pacing of this movie helps add to like the comedic effect, like everything that's going on, everything. So let's before we get too deep into that, let's talk about the characters. So there's we understand the synopsis of the movie, right? There are three main characters. Those three main characters are Vladislav, who is played by Jermaine Clement. We have Taika Waititi, who plays Viago. Taika is extremely well known nowadays. Of everyone that played in this film, or part had a hand in the making of this film,
Yeah.
I would say that Taika is probably the one who is most famous and went on. Not that everyone in this film wasn't successful in some measure. Taika was clearly the single most successful person to come out of this film. And then we have, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I do apologize. Johnny Bra or Broth or Brug. I'm not
Bru.
sure. Maybe it's Brug. I don't know. I do apologize. I should have looked that up. And he plays Deacon, the youngest of the quartet of vampires. And then we have
Peter.
yeah, I can't remember his name offhand. I do apologize. I can't remember. Ben something. And Peter is like the oldest of the four vampires. He's like 8,000 years old or something like that. And we actually see him the least. And I think that's, I don't know. There's probably a joke in there as well to be said about that, but yeah, so we have this quartet of vampires, and basically a documentary crew is following them around. It's their daily interactions with each other, with the world around them, with other vampires, and it all culminates in what is referred to as the Black Masquerade, or Unholy Masquerade, which is an annual celebration for vampires, undead, witches, like zombies, witches, stuff like that. They have this annual celebration in New Zealand. Yeah, it's this is supposed to be like a documentary or a mockumentary of the weeks preceding this grand event, and just little shenanigans that goes on between these guys. I mean, there really is no overarching plot, and I think that's
Yeah.
kind of like part of the style. It just kind of meanders around, and you just follow these guys around, and the weird things that they do, the eccentricities they have, and it's very well done. It's very well done. I love when actors can do comedy like this with a straight face, because some of the stuff that came out of these guys' mouths is just so absolutely absurd, but they are not breaking character one little bit. I can't do that. I can't imagine ever trying to do that. So credit to everyone involved in this film, because
Yeah, and their fourth wall breaking into the camera looking at us and we're like, how are you not they're just like reacting or they're smiling, keeping character. I'm like, how are you doing that? Stop it.
yeah, it's a crazy talent to be able to do that. Because you got to imagine, what if they can stay straight faced during that, what does it take to get these guys to break character and laugh? Like
Exactly.
what shenanigans happened behind the camera that actually, like, what, I want to see the content that got cut, because I want to know what happened to make these guys like break character.
There could be a lot of takes, right? If they laughed, they just do another take.
Maybe. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm sure.
There's
But
probably they probably had a lot of fun in the background shooting this.
yeah. Yeah. Vladislav. And each of these guys, by the way, they take on like they're supposed to be representative of the various vampire tropes, right?
Yeah.
So Peter is supposed to be like your prototypical Nosferatu, like black and white. That's why he's monochromatic. You know, the black and white, old school vampire.
Does not
Um,
change his clothes.
does not change his clothes. I mean, he's just monstrous through and through. You have Taika, who's supposed to be like the debutante. He's like, like the interview with a vampire, like era vampire, right? Where very wealthy, very pedantic, very well spoken. So that's Viago's role. Vladislav is, the Mary Shelley's like version, or I'm sorry, Bram Stoker's version of Dracula. He's supposed to be like that version of Dracula, or a vampire. And then you have Deacon, who's the youngest of them all, only a couple hundred years old, and he's supposed to be like the modern version, or at least the parody of the modern version that we understand or that we've come to accept as a vampire. Like he may not glisten, but I mean he takes it to another level. He makes it very funny, So each of these guys like represent like the four, stereotypical vampire tropes and how they interact with each other and stuff.
Keeping in line with the vampire tropes and that side of it, they do cover what their strengths are, their weaknesses are as vampires. The lore to this movie,
Yeah.
they are scared of crucifixes. They cannot go in sunlight. They have familiars that do their bidding. They can hypnotize people.
Mm-hmm.
They have to be invited into places. The shape shifting. Oh, they can't eat human food also, or they'll throw up blood for
That is true. Yep.
projectile vomiting.
So I'm not really into vampires, but like my understanding is when you kill the oldest vampire, like doesn't that kill off all the vampires they made?
That
Well, that's
depends
one take.
on.
Oh,
Yeah,
gotcha.
that sounds like some Vampire Diaries shit, but
Yeah, it's one take. Kill the. Well, I mean, if I would assume that they didn't include that trope because if that were the case, like say that it weren't like a biological like strain that creates vampires or some kind of curse or something like that. Let's just presume that it is some kind of like curse and that is the rule, right? It's an absurd rule because it would be very very easy to wipe out the entire vampire, menace, right? Especially in like the burgeoning years when they were first starting, because it all has to come down to one guy, right? Or girl, whatever. But it comes down to a patient zero. And let's say patient zero, turns 10, those 10 turn another 10, those 10 turn another 10, et cetera, et cetera. Eventually you get to like exponential values. But if you happen to like be able to track down like just one of those third or fourth tier individuals and you happen to kill just one of them, you're killing like possibly millions of vampires by staking one dude,
yeah.
right? So it's like, God forbid you actually find patient zero or one of his immediate 10, because then you're wiping out 10% of the population with one kill. So,
Right.
I mean, it kind of like negates. And then what happens? What happens? Do all of his descendants die? Do they just like lose the curse? Do you have all these Victorian era vampires walking around who are suddenly human? Like, how do
I
you deal with that?
There's like another take too where when the head vampire dies, like everyone is sort of tied to that vampire where they sort of have to obey that vampire, but if that vampire
Hmm.
were to die and they're not able to like kill that vampire because they made them or whatever. But if that
Hmm.
vampire were to die, all the descendants would be free. So then they would be able to lead their own group of vampires. I don't know. I think it's from True Blood. I don't know. I haven't watched that in a
Hmm.
while.
Yeah, I think True Blood did that too. I think Vampire the Masquerade also had kind of like a play on that as well. At
Lost
least
Boys too. Okay.
the Lost Boys. Yeah, yeah, Lost Boys did that. Where you just kill the main vampire and all the other vampires turn human. But yeah, so I mean, and Lost Boys is a perfect example of that. You just kill one guy and you like wipe out the menace. It's a very inefficient way. Like, say these things were like that's presuming obviously if that's the case, then it has to be some kind of like supernatural thing. It's not going to be a biological thing because if like I happen to contract a venereal disease and the person who gave it to me dies, I still have the venereal disease, right? I mean, that would be amazing if it just worked that way, but it doesn't. So like, yeah, so it has to be some kind of curse or something like that, and that is interesting because if that is how they behave, then it inherently means that, or it implies that magic is real as well, right? At least in the universe in which the story takes place.
True.
You
Just
know,
all the different spins, and because you don't want just like the same kind of story all the time. You kind of want to switch it up with
Hmm.
interesting lore. But yeah, we can get into other vampire movies later.
so something I liked about this, and I typically, like I said, don't really like werewolves, but I loved all the jokes they made at the werewolves, like "Don't piss inside," you
Yeah,
guys smell.
yeah.
It was funny. Yeah, I had a good time.
We're werewolves, not swearwolves.
Yeah, it's like a huge AA group, but because they have to have some kind of control, because when that curse comes on the full wound, they just act crazy.
Hmm.
Right, and they were like, like getting their clothes off because they didn't want to tear it.
Hmm.
I just love the practical effects too.
Yeah, it's
They
it's an amazing movie. It really is an amazing movie. I think anyone who appreciates like I don't want to say slapstick, but if you appreciate films that like for example mockumentaries, if you're into mockumentaries, or if you're into any kind of like, especially if you're from the United States and you happen to like any kind of like foreign comedy, for example, like if you're into British comedy, New Zealander comedy is not that far off. If you like Australian comedy, again, it's not that far off. If you're into that kind of genre, if you're into foreign films, foreign sense of humor, it's very. I love watching movies like this that are or comedies that are like this from other countries because it's so interesting to see or to experience the difference in senses of humor, right? It's subtle, but it is there. And it's very hard to like verbalize as to like what makes it different.
Yeah, that's true. When Vladislav was like going through his, oh God, the beast, he's all looking all fucked up. He's like, I'm on here doing my dark bidding. He's literally on eBay bidding for a table.
Bidding on a table. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like the play on words,
The
highbrow intellectual
yeah.
humor.
The scene where like they're having the dinner. It's like biscotti. Your
Biscotti.
biscotti. Yeah, your biscotti is worms. Your biscotti is worms. And he's like, what? Your penis. Your penis is a snake.
Yeah, when even before Vladislav yells out "bat fight," right? When he yells at him
Uh-huh.
to Nick, he usually people say "shut up, shut up." Like you can't. He enunciates his words. Shut up.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, he's like committed to that fucking character.
I love all three of these actors in these roles. I can't pick a favorite because they're both awesome for completely different reasons. Deacon, when they're in the when they're having in the beginning of the movie, when they're having that scene, the flatmate meeting, and they're all sitting around and discussing the chores. There's a very quick, like 2-second clip of where I believe it's Vladislav is talking, and we see Deacon, and he makes this face where like one eye gets bigger than the other. Like he's making this face like, what the hell did you just say? Like his physical comedy with his face, the actor who played Deacon was absolutely amazing. Vladislav, I mean, he's got a great voice. He's got like a great posture, composure. Taika is just all around funny. I don't know. Just it's very awesome to watch these three guys just gag off of each other.
Vladislav the poker. He has a title.
Vladislav the Poker. And they did the little eyebrow raise. I like to poke people with implements.
What I was gonna say was, you remember when the cops come and they're like, "Oh, we heard some shrieking and stuff," and they weren't going around, but they were hypnotized.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, everything's fine here. That was the moment that I thought that, okay, maybe these are two comedy actors from a different show, and maybe they're like highlighting them or special guesting them into the movie. But I looked it up, and they actually made a TV show about those two characters in 2019.
Yeah. It was called, what was it called? It was like this paranormal thing.
Yeah.
I watched a few episodes of that. Sadly I couldn't really get into it, but I did watch a few episodes of that. But I mean, if you had to pick a character that was your favorite, Brick, who would you pick,
That is a tough one. I'd probably say Vlad.
and why is that? Why is he your favorite?
So like when I rewatched it, I didn't remember the whole beast bit. So I
Hmm.
thought it was like a beast. I didn't know he just called his ex-girlfriend the beast. So like I was getting ready to like see this interaction, and then it was just not.
Um,
It was just like the
but what
payout was
guy
funny.
doesn't though?
Right. The beast.
They,
Beast.
there's other words that men call their exes, but
Yeah.
it's funny as fuck.
What about your favorite scene? What would you say is your favorite scene?
I don't think I have a favorite scene.
Oh, I do.
Probably when the what's his name? That old vampire?
Peter?
Peter? Yeah.
Mhm.
When Peter died
Okay.
and he's like burning in the basement.
Okay.
I don't know. I thought that was funny, and they weren't really like trying to help him. I don't know.
Oh, okay. So him burning wasn't the funny part. It was just the entire okay. I'm like,
And Vlad running down the hallway, spilling all the water to barely even trying to help.
yeah.
Yeah, like they did such a terrible job helping him. I don't know. I found that funny.
For a second, I thought we were gonna have to call some kind of authorities.
You find it funny when people are being fucking tortured?
Immolated?
by
Yeah.
someone?
Yeah. Yeah. And then they go down there and they're looking around. He's like, oh, I know that guy.
Sorry, not that scene. The scene right after that where the cops are like, "Oh, this guy's sleeping. You should put him in a bed," but he was like dead. The vampire
Yeah.
hunter.
Yeah.
Like they're completely buying everything
Yeah.
that they're feeding it because of the fact that they're vampires, and there's like they could easily persuade the police.
Yeah. They
I
hypnotize
just
them. Yeah.
That was
One
my
thing-
favorite scene.
I know it's supposed to be funny, but the one thing that I just can't stand, it's like when you get turned into a vampire or you were like that already, they're just so dense. Vampires are so dense and so gullible. Or they're just like narcissistic. I can't tell. It's just like, bro, all of them.
Well,
I
it's
guess
part of the
supposed to be funny,
comedy.
but
It's part of the funny. It's part of the comedy. Yeah, they're completely like out of time, and I think that's the key point of it all is because they are all out of time, and none of them have adapted at all. What would happen if you took four people? What would happen if you were turned into a vampire and you never changed? Not only did you never change physically, but you never changed like socially, intellectually,
true.
emotionally. What would it be like? And that's why we have these four guys that are like just completely different from one another, and they're all childish. They're all like petty. They have their own grievances with one another. They have their own like idiosyncrasies about them, like the way they behave. I love that. Like they bring up like Vladislav's like, well, we could get some slaves, and and Deacon's like, no, we can't do that. And he's like, well, why not? Vampires don't do dishes.
I also like because they didn't have to make this choice, because you know how Nick is technically the newest vampire. They could have did it, but they made an effort to make sure that it was a human that helped them bridge the gap into the new technological age with Stu.
Was Stu. Yeah.
Yeah.
They loved Stu. That was like a gimmick throughout the entire movie. They're absolutely they adored everything about
Which
Stu.
was Nick's friend, right?
Yeah, which was Nick's friend. Yeah.
Very introverted, but he's smart. And because you can basically get a lot of jokes out of, oh, what is this device? Oh, there's a crucifix behind you. Ah,
Yeah.
but he's getting text, right?
Yeah.
And like his hand when he's like doing the motion, like I'm texting you, ha 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 ha. Messages going like floating through the air. But yeah,
What about you?
Um,
Who's your favorite character, Siren?
I would say my favorite character is Vladislav. I just love everything about him.
Yeah.
The look of him, because he's kind of it's like he's kind of like sexy, but at the same time, like I like the way he talks with the accent and everything, and
Hmm.
just like his overall brutish, but like the brooding, but funny.
Dead but delicious.
I think if you've
Exactly.
seen Flight of the Concourse, you need to see this.
Yes, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
you like it. If you like Flight
Oh
of the
yeah.
Concourse, you need to see this if you haven't seen it already.
Yeah. Yeah. What about
My
your favorite
favorite
scene?
my favorite scene is actually Deacon's dance. I can't. I love that. I love it.
His erotic dance.
Yeah,
I was doing
the
an
Oh,
erotic
music.
dance for my
that was
friends. They were
interrupted.
loving it. Yeah.
I love it every time. It just stands out for me with the music and he's doing his. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of why Deacon doesn't like Nick, because now Deacon is no longer the youngest of the group, right? He's no longer like the bad boy, the hip guy, because now they have Nick. He's now he takes that role. So where does Deacon fit into it, you know? So what else is on your list?
Oh, you mean me? Because I take notes.
Mm-hmm. What else is on your list that you want? Well, last time
Um.
you lost your shit because we didn't go over everything that you wrote down.
Okay. 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 Let's see. Oh, I like that. The familiar Jackie that wanted to be a vampire so fucking bad.
Yeah.
She named her daughter Akasha. She wanted it so bad.
The movie was about like an hour and a half or so, from what I remember, but it felt like it
Mm.
was much quicker than that. Like it felt like it went by quick. It was a good
Yes.
time.
The pacing for sure, and the editing. Music wise, I like the way that they did the music gave you those old timey vibes of a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Taika clearly likes horns, because there's a lot of I'm not an instrument guy, so I can't really tell you, but there's a lot of like horns and clarinets and stuff like that are like playing in the ambient music throughout this film. And I don't know if that's like part and parcel of like the New Zealander like sense of humor, or maybe it's just exclusively to his like style. But when he came to this movie, there was a lot of horns and a lot of like woods. Is that what they're called? Wood and brass instruments. I think that's what they're referred to.
Yeah. I think it's more because if you, okay, so say if you did a harpsichord, that's too like pinning it down to such a specific area
Mm-hmm.
of time of like music and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So if you kind of do the horns, it's kind of like all over the place, like Eastern European, that kind of feel
Right.
of old timey, like 1400s and stuff like that. And it also brings the tone like down into that also vampire vibes.
Mm-hmm.
Cinematography wise, I like it's kind of shaky cam, but not really because it's documentary angles of the movie, and there's also like comedic angles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean that adds to the whole like mockumentary. There's got the and it's got that, I don't know what that's called, that like it's got that grainy look to it. It clearly has like a, maybe like a sepia filter that's over. It's got a very distinct color in most of the scenes, like a very light, maybe yellow or sepia or something like that that's going on.
Does that
Um
help the aged look of the makeup to make it more
I think so. I think so.
deathly looking? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Like every scene at night also, like they're really sticking with the documentary angle, because there's only ever one light. It's always done by the camera, so it's assuming like you have the one light that's on top of the camera that's shining down on them, so that's really the only illumination you get.
Mm-hmm.
Like you were saying with the bat fight, like when they're walking down the alley.
Bat fight.
Yeah, bat fight. Not cool, man. Yeah, I don't know. I just love this movie so much. I've watched this movie so many times. I would play this movie on repeat in the background while I was working with models or doing whatever. I'd always have this movie playing in the background. I have it stored permanently on my phone, so like if I'm going for a long drive, I'll flip it on and like having it have it play in the background. I love this movie so much. I
It's a
can't put my finger on why I love this movie so
yeah.
much, but I do. I absolutely do. I've watched
It's
this
a
is by far the one movie I've watched more than any other movie.
oh, that's
And it
that's
yeah,
a big
I
thing
mean,
to
I've
say.
watched it like 30 some odd times. I absolutely love like movies, and we've talked about this and other things, but I don't want to spoil it, like other movies with which we reviewed. And I've watched, some of those movies like 6, 7 times. I've never watched a movie 30 fucking times until I got this one. Like I have watched this. It's crazy how many times I've watched this movie.
Different kind of feel good movie, I think. Because you know how you watch certain things like, oh, Lord of the Rings extended edition
Hmm.
for a feel good, like a
Hmm.
journey, but that's way too long. But this is like a different kind of, like, I'm more like a comedic, like soup for the comedy soul, I guess you can say.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like it has something to do with the whole mockumentary thing because I know people that watch The Office and they have it like that too, where they just have it on in the background, and every time they're doing something and then they pay attention to the show for a bit, or in this case the movie, there's always a bit in that time period while you're watching it like to laugh at.
Yes, it's very episodic. Like each scene is self-encapsulated. Like one scene doesn't carry over to the next scene, right? Like each scene is its own story. And yeah, they're all kind of like interrelated, but it's like the events of the previous scene do not carry over to the next scene.
Mm.
So if you look away from it, you're paying attention to something else and you turn around and you're not paying attention to it, and then you turn around and you start paying attention to it. Whatever scene you're like, you don't have to have seen the previous scene to know what's going on in this scene. You know what I'm saying?
Right, it's like like a series of skits that make up a movie, and they
Yeah.
Yes.
tell a whole story.
Yes. Yes. And I think that's part of the appeal of why I've watched it so many times.
I'm gonna do a little rundown of the effects real quick.
Hmm.
Because they did a lot on, like, I think they had a really, really small budget. The way that they use the, like, old-timey reference material, like, just the little details of, like, how they, made the house look very old and Victorian, lived in, kinda, dirty because nobody does their house chores. A lot of practical effects in this movie.
Hmm.
The contacts, the costumes. There are some CGI, when he's, like, at the like a CVS or whatever, and he was like, "Oh, you want me to show you? Oh, you're not a vampire." And then he shows his full on like vampire face. You
Yeah.
don't. I'm all, oh, they actually have vampire face. That, and then like a few times with the eyes, they did so. Oh, and then Deacon was coming out of that backpack that was CGI. That was pretty cool. And also, they were clever with the line work when they were like floating around and fighting and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
they were just like a lot of the subtle, I guess, movie magic, you can say, that they used. Like when they're fighting, when Deacon and Nick were fighting, they were fighting on top of the roof thing. That's an old trick, but I can't remember how it's done. Where you turn everything upside down and stuff like that. Oh, and the old age makeup when Vlad was like when he was like depressed. That was really nice makeup. And Peter too.
Mm,
She's not
mm.
too.
Yeah, I
Yep.
liked it. Overall, I liked it. It's a really good time. If it was on, I wouldn't mind watching it again. It wasn't bad. I
You
enjoyed it.
wouldn't mind? Okay, well then, okay. So, what would you rate it then out of 10?
7.8 or 7.
Really?
See, the thing about mockumentaries is that they are better for me in a show because, like, I know they made a show out of this, but and it has somewhat different actors. But it's just you want more. You want to watch more of these characters, and a movie just doesn't cut it.
You're only giving that rating because you want more? You're not basing it off its, purity by itself, just like as is?
Yeah, it's just I think mockumentaries are best done in series, like TV series.
Okay, so take that out of it. What would you rate it if you had it on the platform and everything that how you wanted?
Same thing. 7.
7?
Yes.
Okay.
7. 7.5.
And
I love how you're getting under her skin. It's pissing her off.
It's good. I enjoy
I'm
it. I like
fine.
it.
Okay, Elle, what out of 10, what is your grade?
Fucking 10. This is a motherfucking 10. For me,
Yeah,
this is a 10.
fucking 10.
I can't watch a movie 30 plus times and not call it a fucking 10. Like I have to. I'm cornered. Like, even if, Siskel and Ebert came up and told me objectively why this movie is not a 10, I would still have to rate it a 10 because I've watched it too many damn times.
Yeah, I don't need a show. I don't need to be in show form for me to say it's a fucking 10. It's a fucking 10.
Yeah, yeah. This movie is, for me, this is the greatest movie ever made. And I cannot I can
Wow.
tell you, I can dissect a lot of movies narratively as far as like cinematography and stuff. Like, I don't understand, or I shouldn't say I don't understand. I'm not formally educated in how movies are made or anything, but I can tell you narratively how a movie is awful or how it is great or whatever.
Did it win a lot of awards though? I
I
think
don't
it
know.
did.
I don't know, but
Boss IMDb that shit.
but yeah, I cannot tell you why I love this movie so much. I can't. It's
So
just
like
something about it.
for cinematography, it's okay for me. And that's just because like you could only do so much with the mockumentary film style. It's shot like it's a documentary. So it's
Mhm.
like it's not about cinematography. It's about like the characters and the story they're telling. And they're not trying to I don't know, it's done in a very good way. I like it a lot. I don't mean to offend by giving it a 7, but 7 is really good for me.
Okay, so you're just like a hard critic. It's not like
Right. So like maybe I'm giving it a 7 because I don't really like vampires. I don't really like werewolves. You know what I mean? Like it's not.
okay.
But if you took that out of it, I like it a lot. Like it's really good. I like it even though it is those things that I'm not really that interested in. So
I'm looking for the awards. Oh, the budget was 1.6 million. It grossed worldwide. It grossed 7.4. That's a really good return, actually.
This movie probably made all of its money from DVDs and
True.
like streaming and stuff like that. I guarantee it. This wasn't like a blockbuster. I did not hear about this movie until it came up on demand. And I was like, I just randomly rented it, watched it, and I was like, I have to buy this fucking movie. And I did.
It won a lot of the like
Like
like the
film
small
festival.
yes, exactly.
Yeah, a lot of film
A
festivals.
lot. It has 26 wins and 18 nominations. So it just went around and just everyone loved it.
I would imagine, I have no actual information to corroborate this, but I would imagine that this movie was probably one of Taika's earlier movies that he did. I know factually speaking that he directed a couple of the episodes of Flight of the Conchords. I cannot tell you what he did before Flight of the Conchords. I have no idea what he did before Flight of the Conchords. But I would imagine that this movie, because he wrote and directed this movie. I would imagine that this movie is the reason why he became like super famous. I would imagine that this was the movie that triggered that and got him other like acting, writing, and directing roles.
His breakout one that he did, it was like Boy 2010. That was his really big breakout. I can't remember if he acted in it or wrote or directed. Probably all three. I don't know, knowing him. But that was his breakout. I
Oh, that was it.
remember,
Okay.
yeah, doing like not a semi deep dive, but I know that was
I do not
that
know
was
what
like
that movie
for.
is. I never watched it until you just mentioned it. I never even heard of it.
I know he did that Jojo Rabbit thing, but that was later. That was 2019. Yeah.
Jojo Rabbit was awesome. That was a good movie.
all right.
And
Well,
see. Oh. Yeah,
okay.
it's a 10 out of 10.
7.5 out of 10.
7. Oh, you raise it up a 0.5 just for Siren,
Okay,
just to
okay.
keep the peace.
That's just going
Just to keep the peace.
Brick Bert over here.
Yeah.
Okay. How are we wrapping this up?
Um.